Tell us a little bit about, your background,
Okay.
how you got into, the healthcare field and chiropractic in general and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Tell us your story.
So my story is when I was raised by a hippie. I'll preface everything with that.
Yeah.
My mom had me at home. She raised me vegetarian.
Okay.
She was super progressive. She felt like, she really would put weird stuff in my lunch. It was pretty much like whatever the fruit or vegetable looked like in the ground. She
Yeah.
thought you should just eat it that way. So I feel really fortunate that I was exposed
Well, yeah,
to.
that's better than, I guess, what the standard kid is being raised on today, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Looking back, I just thought it was so bizarre. And now I'm so grateful that my palate
Yeah.
developed
Mm.
without like a ton of salt, without a ton of, she didn't use butter. Spike. That was the big thing. That was the only seasoning I remember in my life. So when I was in second grade, I actually had probably born with like a PARS defect.
Okay.
But when I was doing PE, and at that time, the PE teacher was just kind of an aggressive person. And I did feel some back pain that got pretty severe, but it was like you finish the exercise. And I wound up with a fracture. So I wound up with a fracture on
Oh,
the
wow.
field. And luckily, my best friend at the time, her father was the chiropractor. So they called my mother immediately because I had, collapsed on the field. And she came and, just threw me in the back of her VW bug and raced me over to Dr. Yarwood, who took x-rays. He was actually right over in Costa Mesa off of Broadway. You probably know that area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Broadway Chiropractic.
Yeah.
It's still there.
Yeah. Okay.
And I have about a grade 1 from that incident, a grade 1 spondylolisthesis. So that was my introduction. It didn't seem weird to me to go to a back doctor for a back injury.
Yeah.
And he wore a white coat. He had a stethoscope. It just seemed perfectly normal. I didn't consider it alternative in any way. I had a dentist. I had, a back doctor. It just, it all made sense to me. So he really was my introduction into being worked on that way. And also he did a ton of rehab. Back then, the consensus was, you did some exercises as well to help rehab. So I always was exposed to alternative healthcare. My mom always felt like food was medicine. And if you ate healthy food, that was how you really, made sure you had a healthy body. So Dr. Yarwood helped me rehab my spondy, and it did take quite a bit of work. I did see him really frequently for a couple of years. So then when I went to, college, I always knew I'd be in the healthcare field somewhere.
Yeah.
And my undergraduate degree, I studied biology, and I have a minor in chemistry. And because I went to religious schools, I actually I believe I earned a minor in pastoral ministries as well.
Oh, wow.
Just because of all the religion classes that we took. So then I got involved. I met a group of doctors doing neurology research and brain mapping, and I worked with them for a couple of years doing brain mapping. They were working on writing the code. This is, in the 90s, early 90s. They were working on writing the code at that point for the gamma knife, which wasn't used in surgery yet, right? As frequently as it is now. So I worked on this brain mapping project for about 2 years with a really amazing group of neurologists and neurosurgeons, and really explored if I would go in that direction, maybe research, but always felt like I wanted to do something where I could really help people maximize their health potential. And really most of what we were doing was dealing with very sick people, and it was really sad. So I also then, when our research program was wrapping up, I started working for a chiropractor. I just wanted to get exposed to what that looked like on a daily basis. I kind of already saw what the neuros were dealing with. They had a lot of stress, a lot of drinking, a lot of smoking to deal with their anxiety, because it was pretty tense job.
The docs were doing that?
Yeah, they really drank a lot. They were overweight. They were, they were working themselves really into the ground.
Wow.
Like the one doctor that I worked for, he's out there somewhere, Dr. Akhtari. He was amazing. But he would be in the lab sometimes for 16 hours when I'd get to work. And I'd be like, when did you last sleep?
16 hours. Like, wow.
Yeah, just so dedicated. Like it was just all about the numbers and crunching numbers and, not a healthy lifestyle. So I went and worked for a chiropractor and just loved the enthusiasm of his patients when they came in, how happy they were. And I was super nervous about going back to this group of neuros to tell them I had decided to go to chiropractic school, thinking that there'd be, like, oh, why are you doing that? And they were actually so supportive, so excited. Yeah, the one neurosurgeon was especially, like, I love chiropractic. I send patients.
Yeah.
And in his mindset, he thought of it as being great for patients with chronic pain. And they were really supportive. So I definitely felt like it was just the right fit for me. Because I had always had a chiropractor, it really didn't seem odd, or I didn't think I was going into something that I considered alternative at all. It was just part of what, of course, you need a chiropractor if you have a spine.
Right. So now fast forward, you go to chiropractic school, you get out and you start to practice. Where did it start to develop into where, your products are, with CBD? How did you get that into your practice? Because it kind of seemed, foreign to a lot of docs, right?
For sure. So in California, luckily, it's been legal for a long time. And about 10 years ago, you could get a card, right? Like a medical card. Mm-hmm. So I right away got a medical card. I knew there had to be a better way to help people with pain, right? You can't just say, well, these drugs are bad and have no alternative for your patient, right? So I will preface all of this by saying my biggest inspiration for these products and for helping not just my patients was a family member. My aunt had lupus for 35 years, and I really did watch not just the drugs that helped with the lupus affect her, because, those you don't have much of a choice, you're right. She took actually Plaquenil for probably 35 years. But also, my daughter's got to leave for work. Bye, sweetie. Bye. But also watching her become addicted to medicine for pain. And, we have this idea that a drug addict looks like somebody who's, in the road scoring heroin. Yeah. But for what I see in my experience with my own family member was somebody who legitimately had pain, who became an addict simply by taking it as prescribed, and ultimately did tons of organ damage. I'm sure you know that even for lupus, or, they're going to give you pain medication, but they always wind up giving them Xanax and other anti-anxiety meds as well. And it destroys your organs. And the place that I was in was trying to explain to other family members, that her failing body wasn't from the lupus. She never had progressive organ failure from the lupus. It was from the drugs.
Oh, wow.
And,
they said that?
It was pretty obvious because she never had any scans that turned up any damage from lupus in her organs. But she did get kidney failure, and it put pressure on her heart eventually as well too.
And so unfortunately, that's a common thing for a lot of people that they don't really realize,
And no one in the family, when I would, tell my mother, like, everybody wanted me to look at her stuff and look at her records. And it was so hard to say, at this point, what she needs to do is get off these pills. She's addicted. Yeah. She's absolutely an addict. And that was, a couple of honest doctors would at least confirm that. But again, what do you do if somebody has legitimate pain, right? You can't just say, well, you can't take these. So same with my patients, wanting as the opiate crisis started to become, and especially because my husband works in the pharmaceutical world, knowing that the opiates were really on the way out, the cat's out of the bag. We know that they're damaging. We know you can't take them for a lifetime. I mean, she really took those drugs for almost 4 years. And what do you do for people? So I started going to the dispensaries and buying CBD for my patients, and at least showing them, like, these are things you can do that are, in lieu of taking even just Advil and ibuprofen, and the amount of that stuff I used every month for cramps and for my period, and just knowing that you can't take that stuff once a month over a lifetime and pretend it's not chronic use. That is chronic use.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And we know it's not good. There's nothing helpful about, taxing your liver to process all of this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I not only started using it for myself, but then at least, I kind of had like a laundry list of herbs and things. Like if somebody came in acute pain, there's herbs that come to mind, right? Yeah. And so I would wind up like, okay, you need to go to this dispensary and get CBD and get magnesium and get willow's bark. And I had like all of these things depending on what they were presenting with. And for a lot of patients, that was great. For some of them, it's overwhelming to get a list of supplements to take. And I never really carried them in my office because I didn't want to seem like I was pushing a product, plus making sure it's clean, making sure where's the bottle coming from. I just didn't want to have to back a product that I didn't really understand where it's being made to. So, then a couple more years go by, and I'm like, okay, some patients are telling me it's super cost prohibitive too, to go to Mother's and have 10 herbs you got to buy, and you come out of there, that's $200, and it's not sustainable for a lot of people, right? Especially if you're trying to compete with something as cheap as Advil. Right. To convince them now to go spend, $100, $200 on stuff they're going to have to rebuy monthly was hard to do. Yeah. So when the laws started changing, and I really started working on these products before it was legal federally, which is a gamble, right? Yeah. I mean, there was a huge chance I would never be able to sell it anywhere but in my office. And again, was I going to get arrested? I don't want to wind up in handcuffs on the news. Like, just for something that's an herb. But I started hearing from some friends that the laws were starting to come around, and that probably the farm bill was going to pass, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that was on the horizon, I figured I'm just going to go for it, and hopefully the laws will catch up. So what I did was I took my list of herbs, and I really thought of all the things that I deal with, right? I've gotten headaches. I've had things that just needed daily maintenance, right? Healing. I've got cramps every month, and I do get pretty grumpy, grouchy, and something for sleep, right? My big one really is trying to get people not to use Xanax. I really just think it's so addictive. It's such poison. And they hand it out in Orange County like, like everybody should have it in your purse. And that frightens me. So really having like alternatives for patients that worked in all the different things that I see and that I need for myself. So wanting a topical and then a women's product for, regulating that system. Yeah. So I took my ideas then to first I had to find a company that would really source the hemp.
Right.
And then working with chemical engineers. Just because I have a bunch of lists doesn't mean it's even real. Like, how do you get this stuff into the body? How do you make sure it's bioavailable? And what can you combine?
So let's actually talk about, because I know a lot of people that's going to be listening to this. A lot of people, on social media are going to ask this one question.
Sure.
Because this is the one question I always get about CBD is, if I take CBD, am I going to get high, or am I going to test positive on a drug test if my employer requires that?
Gotcha. So
what's going on?
The difference between what you smoke and CBD, right, is the plant.
Right.
One's a cannabis plant that has the higher THC in it, right? One has a hemp plant.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we get the higher CBD from. Now, that goes into the question of full spectrum, right?
Right.
And why does it need to be full spectrum, which includes THC?
Yeah.
Right. So
THC being the psychoactive.
Part of the cannabis plant. Yeah. So it's a real low level in the hemp plant, but you want it in there because it's really THC is really one of the 5 major cannabinoids present in the plant. So if you extract that, it's no longer you'll see pure isolate. That's not pure if they've tampered with it. And it will affect the way that it binds to the receptors. You've got, the CB1 and CB2 receptors, and THC interacts with those. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that the product has 0.03% is the federal legal limit.
Okay.
To say it's not psychoactive, right? You're not going to get high from it.
Yeah.
But then we've got this other thing. Okay, well, let's say you work for Raytheon or you work for the government. They might have rules about CBD that they're not going to differentiate on a test. The test might pick up both. That is not, I haven't had that happen with anyone. I do have people that work for the government and some police officers and things like that. But again, I can't prove, if somebody did turn up positive, they'd have to prove that they weren't, smoking pot all day too. But and how you determine that you've got a product is that product should have lab values readily available on the website.
Because nowadays you can buy I see CBD products at like gas stations, right?
Right. So you really want to make sure that the company has taken the time to pay for lab testing to verify, first of all, that there's any CBD even in it. Yeah. Dr. Oz did a special where he tested. That's an important
part, right?
Right. He did a special where he tested a bunch of CBD products and like 80% of them had 0 CBD in them. So why you want to look for the lab values, you want to make sure, first of all, it has that 0.0103, percent THC, and that it also contains CBD. So if you go on my website, that's one of the big tabs across the front is I want people to look at those lab tests.
Yeah.
That's something people should get used to doing. You want that there. Any company should have that.
Yeah. So I looked at you guys, your website, and you guys contracted out a third party, right?
Yes.
To do all the lab values. And I love that. You provide all of the lab work showing what you just talked about and also the cleanliness.
Yes.
Right. Making
I
sure
think
that
that's really important.
You don't want to be putting in stuff and getting toxins at the same time. Right. And that's the one big issue that we face in the marketplace is we see so many of these products because everybody's jumping on the CBD bandwagon. Everybody knows the benefits, obviously. Everybody's heard about the benefits, but the problem is, well, which ones and how do I go about choosing one, right? And that's what I love about what you guys, you're doing is providing the science behind that and also the proof of the cleanliness and efficacy, of it.
So I found the company that gets the hemp. This is an important, I think, part to differentiate our hemp too, is that this company, EcoScience, they're the ones who are getting this clean hemp. It's not even coming from the US. It's coming from the Netherlands because they've grown hemp for thousands of years and pesticides are illegal to use.
Oh,
not like in America where it's very self-regulated. You can call a product organic. If it's not sprayed 3 days before, you can have aerial spraying going around all around you. And again, for someone like my aunt, those toxins are going to be terrible for her system or anybody really, but somebody that's got like a neurologic issue, my patients with MS or other things that I might not be treating, but they still have. I really wanted to make sure that this was the cleanest hemp I could get a hold of. And I do think that actually makes a huge difference when I hear people say, I've tried CBD before and it didn't work. And then they try it. And it's because this is super clean and it's full spectrum. It's also CO2 extracted, which is the gold standard, right? anything heat extracted is going to destroy some of the other things in hemp, which are, hemp not only has these cannabinoids, but it has important terpenes, it has omega-3, 6, amino acids. You want all of that in there. You don't want any of that destroyed, because part of that disrupts what we call the entourage effect, right, of the uptake of CBD. So you want all of those things in it. So I do think that matters a lot. I also think it matters what you put the product in. If you've got a crappy bottle from China that's maybe got contaminants in it, how long till that gets in your product? You're putting that in your mouth. And again, I'm thinking of patients that are very sensitive, right, to all kinds of chemicals and toxins. So my bottles are also from the US too.
See, that's what a lot of people don't even realize as well, right? They're just looking at the stuff in the bottle, not the containers and all that kind of stuff.
I really wanted to just do everything I would do if it was humanly possible. And then hopefully it would come out where people could still afford it.
That's a real big issue, especially with CBD products, because you see a lot of them on the market that are well upwards into $150 to $200.
I just feel like that's too cost prohibitive to really get people on board. Again, like I said, because you're competing against over-the-counter drugs maybe that are very inexpensive. So I really wanted to make sure that it was, relatively affordable for whoever really needs it.
Yeah.
That's important to me.
So when I got the box and I opened it up, first thing, I'm looking through it, and my wife comes in and she's looking at it. And she goes, "What do you got?" And I told her, "Oh, I got, like a new CBD product. We're going to be testing it out." And, there's all the different ones, right? You got the pain, you got the calm. And then she looked at the one specifically, said women's, right?
Women. Yeah.
And my wife goes through women issues on a monthly basis. And so she's like, "Hey, this is a great time. I got, some, she was going through she gets eye pain and migraines and all that kind of stuff around her period." So I was like, "Hey, let's put it to the test." She took it and immediately, we're talking within that day, it was for her gone, and
Amazing.
she told me to say that this morning. She reminded me again
great.
this morning, because I told her we're going to be on the podcast and all that kind of stuff. So she said, and that was, I think that was the only CBD product that she ever tried or was ever willing to try, just because it was focused around
on women.
Women. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so glad it helped her.
And
it is really, I would tell her too that just for my own experience, having really just pretty nasty cycles, it's changed my cycle over time and really made it so much better. And I really did not expect that. I thought it would be more like,
I talk with patients a lot about the, and the endocannabinoid system and how it regulates, the entire body, and the importance and how within the healthcare system, even within the natural healthcare system, that's often overlooked, right? We look towards these other designer supplements and all this kind of stuff, but CBD, hemp in and of itself, has always had this negative stigma, right, towards it. And I guess now things are changing. It's becoming a little bit more regulated. But what do you still find to be some of the hurdles for a lot of people of wanting to get started by using CBD?
So, I think a lot of the hurdles are kind of what you mentioned, is people are worried they're going to get high. They're going to, not be able to pass a drug test, even though I don't know how many people really get drug tested for their job, but it's got to be a pretty low percentage, but they're worried about that primarily. And what's been really interesting in my practice, though, is it tends to be my older patients who are they don't care as much.
Yeah.
And I thought it would be the other way around. My older ladies and older gentlemen would be like, "I don't want to get high." They're actually way more open to it. But one of the things I did to combat that fear was do the 2 topicals. So, and I feel like people are so much more willing, and actually topically you can get a ton more herbs and things absorbed. So my topical formulas actually have more like 22 extracts in them, which is pretty exciting. So I really feel like that's what I've done to sort of help people. I go, listen, try this pain lotion. And if you like how it works, just remember we can put that on the inside of you. And that will also, help. And I kind of ease them into it that way. But I think that's the biggest hurdle is they're worried that they're going to get high. And then the other group of people is worried that it won't work at all because they've maybe tried other products that didn't work. And I have had patients who spent quite a bit of money on products. And I always tell them, just bring them in. I'll look at them because now, and we can go over some things people should look at.
Yeah.
To tell whether you've got really like a good product or a crap product, or the way it's labeled can be really misleading as well. So that's my other hurdle, is that people just think, oh, I tried that already and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's like they got probably a really low quality product.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch
everywhere.
of them out there. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them out there. I get hit up all the time with all that stuff. And like everything that people send to me before I'm even going to talk about it to my patients and people that are following me on Instagram and Twitter and all that kind of stuff, is I'm going to use it myself. So I got the box. My wife utilized it. She got her thing. She got her results and all that. I jumped straight towards the topical. Being outside of what I do, I also coach youth baseball. And there's a part of me that still thinks that I'm 16, 18 years old. And, and some of the times I'm going full force. Right. And at the end of the day, my body reminds me, hey, you're not 16, 18 years old. So I had, I think it was a bicep pain that one day. Mm-hmm. So I start with the topical and utilize that. And I think it was within 3 to 4 hours that the throbbing went away. Nice. I was like, okay, that's how I knew, because we've used CBD in the past, like old school, like what you were talking about,
right?
Where I had people that made their own salves and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And so I know, like, if it's gonna be effective, it's gonna work pretty instantaneously. So that was my first one. And then that night I ended up using, I think it's called the Calm. Is that the Calm? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I track my sleep every night. And that was like one of the nights where I got a little bit over 8 hours of continuous sleep. Nice. And that's pretty phenomenal for me. I'm usually averaging at about 6.5, 7 hours. And I was able to, get more and get into REM. So for me, outside of looking at the labs and all that kind of stuff, I use my own body as my laboratory, and that results and all that kind of stuff. So for you, what do you guys find as your best selling product, and why is that?
I would say it's the Calm by far. Yeah. I had no idea when I first, I knew I needed to do like an anti-anxiety sleep aid somewhere in there. And I had no idea how pervasive that really is. Either anxiousness or the inability to sleep.
Yeah.
Is I feel like it's just everyone, that get. And so I really feel like that one has been so great to either get people to back off of a sleep aid that's prescription, or back off a little bit, or replace an anti-anxiety type of med, because you can feel it calming your system down if you take even just smaller dose than you needed to sleep. And then you can go, okay, I need a little more, or like, I'll take it because I get terrible anxiety before I go to the dentist. So just being able to take something like that, and then it helps with the dental work tremendously. Oh my gosh, afterwards. But I think that's been the biggest one. And I really, really didn't realize, I don't think, how many people really experience both of those things in their daily life. But sleep is huge. People aren't getting any sleep.
Especially nowadays with the amount of artificial lights that we're being exposed to and throwing off our circadian rhythms, not enough sunlight, all that kind of stuff. It's rampant in our society. I mean, you see so many people on sleep medications, and some of those sleep medications doesn't even make a dent in their sleep, you know.
Yeah,
man.
and that does, you know, it does terrify me for my patients, just because I have that family experience watching someone get addicted to the Xanax. And, you know, if you've ever taken one, you just feel like a zombie. I mean, it's really a terrible feeling. So I wanted something that you could take that and wake up and not feel any of that like residual too.
Yeah. What are the most common things that you're finding people diving into CBD for? Like, why would they even start taking CBD stuff?
I think a lot of people do want to take it for pain, you know, and I do think a lot of, you know, obviously we see neuromusculoskeletal injuries, and that, I think that's the huge market where people do associate CBD with an injury and maybe inflammation if they know about, you know, why joints hurt and what arthritis is. So I do get a lot of people that are interested in it for that reason.
And
chronic, you know, more chronic pain. Like I have arthritis, or I've got, you know, and it does tend to be more like people that have a chronic condition. I feel like people don't associate it as much with an acute condition, which they should. Yeah. But definitely they get it like, okay, I've got this thing that's happening all the time. What can I do?
And for some, I know some are going to ask or thinking this question is, one, is it safe to use for pregnant women, nursing moms, and what about babies, infants, toddlers?
So, you know, these are all areas that I can't really comment on definitively because the research isn't there. I don't think there's been any good research. So when my patients ask me, I tell them that, listen, there hasn't been a ton of research. There has been some research in autistic kids, and there is an actual prescription strength CBD that's an injectable for seizures. It's called Epidiolex. Yep. And then they go, well, would you give it to your kids? Right? That's always what they want to know. Right. And I do. I would way rather. So I have a 13-year-old and a 17-year-old. They both have their own set of like the roll-on for sure. My son, you know, plays sports and all that, and so does my daughter. And my daughter gets cramps, so she really likes the women's formula, and the pain formula she uses as well if she gets really severe cramps. And you know, I always tell people, listen, if you give your kid an Advil, then this is very safe, you know, but I do always tell the parent, listen, this is going to have to be on you to do a little bit of research, and you have to do what you're comfortable with, because I can't really say without good research. And, you know, I try and stay in my lane in that way too. Yeah.
Now,
but I do let my children use it.
Me too.
Yeah.
What should people be looking for, you know, when diving into CBD? What are some of the criteria that you recommend?
So the first thing I would say is you want to make sure it says full spectrum. That is super important. In isolate, you're wasting your money. And so to look for words that are deceiving, like pure, natural, isolate, suspiciously high milligrams is the other one that I tell people, listen, if it says it's got 100,000 milligrams in it and it's $20, there's no way. CBD is the cost, is the most expensive of all the herbs in my formula. I know how much it costs. Yeah. And you'll see a product that says it's got all these milligrams, or if it says it's water soluble, it's an isolate.
Okay.
So it can't go in water. Only an isolate is dissolvable. And then I tell people, make sure that you can, you know, if you get a bottle that you can actually look at it.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can find a full one here. It should be a clear fluid. It should have no contaminants in it. So it shouldn't be cloudy. Okay. If it's cloudy, it might have something flavoring in it, or they're hiding something. They're hiding that it's not clear. You should look. Does it have, is there stuff floating around in there? It should be yellow or amber if it's clear you've got an isolate again. Okay. And it shouldn't have flavoring. You don't want it to taste like fruit punch or candy. You want it to taste like what it is.
Yeah, what does the flavoring do? Like
I usually feel like they're masking a crappy product.
Okay. Gotcha.
And especially when you look at some, like I had a patient that paid really a lot of money for one, and the minute I drew it up, it was cloudy and gross. I'm like, they're masking something. So really to look at it, and then I would tell, a patient, next thing, go on that website. If they don't have lab values for you, pass.
Yeah. Gotcha.
They've got to have done that. You've got to do your due diligence. It's expensive to get lab testing, but if you're putting out a product, I think that should be part of what you do ethically to make sure that people know what's in it.
Yeah. And let's actually just kind of walk through some of the products in your product line.
Okay.
So we talked about Calm,
yes.
The women's one. What else do you guys have in there?
I did a tincture for pain, and this has all of the other herbs in it that I would have told, written on my little pad, right? Willow's bark, turmeric.
So, and that's the interesting thing too, that it just popped into my mind again, that a lot of the other CBD products are just CBD. And right. I noticed in yours that there's, you have other herbs in there, right?
Yeah.
And that for me, I think that was one of the first ones that I've seen to have all that extra stuff in there. Like you were saying that your patients would come out of Mother's with a $200 bill, right?
Yeah. And I just knew that CBD alone is amazing.
Yeah.
But you could add these other things and really drive the effect, right? Like so in my head, I'm thinking, okay, pain, what am I trying to do, right? I'm trying to reduce inflammation, calm the system down, right? So the other herbs are, again, driving that effect. And so the pain one, I think, is just the most straightforward of all the herbs that are in there too. They're pretty straightforward. People recognize, turmeric's an anti-inflammatory. Like I get that, right? So I do love this formula. The peppermint in this one too. Peppermint. So the flavoring is kind of nice because of the peppermint in this one, and orange oil, right? Increased blood flow. So then I wanted to do a formula. Again, thinking about someone like my aunt who should have had it every day in her system, but maybe she didn't have pain, right?
Right.
So you don't want to take, if you don't need willow's bark and all of that, right? So what would I make for somebody who just needed a daily dose to regulate that ECS system, right? Mm-hmm. And make sure that those receptors are bound. So the Heal is the product that I did with that in mind.
Oh, interesting.
And also taking somebody from an acute pain situation to now healing the injury, right? So what would I put in a formula that needed more of that healing? Well, you might be healing, you need some arnica, you need collagen, you need vitamins, right? You need B vitamins, you've got grapeseed. Again, all things that are going to aid in oxygenation, increasing blood flow to something that's trying to heal. But that this one wouldn't have necessarily like willow's bark in it to target pain.
Yeah.
Right? But just like a good daily dose to make sure that system's. And right now, what are we doing right now to maintain a healthy immune system? This would be the product. I would say, listen, if you're just wanting to keep your immune system, and we've got all those receptors in the immune system for CBD, right? All over the white cells. So super important.
When people are taking that, what's like the recommended dosage? Are they doing it drops, dropper fulls?
So all of my formulas are dosed so that you're getting an effective dose with 10 drops. Okay. So and this is why I really think CBD products need to be with a doctor. I do. I think it's so much more meaningful, and you can really help your patients get to this proper dose. So I tell my patients, you start with the 10 drop sublingual and you go up from there, because the research definitely suggests that if you just give your body way too much, you're also not going to get the proper effect, and you're wasting your money. It's expensive. Even at $69 for a tincture, you don't want to waste it if you don't need to, right? If you're going to get an effective dose but I do feel like some people really need 10 drops is great. I've had people who 5 drops is great, but working with, maybe their practitioner who can tell them, okay, yeah, no, now go up, or take the pain during the day, but you also want to dose at night.
Yeah.
So really helping my patients determine what the proper dose is for them. And that's super individual, kind of like all the things, right? Like even what we do, you can't give one exercise it's going to be amazing for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Within reason, you can, okay, this will be great, but you have to modify things for that person's system and their body and how they react to things. My mom is super, because she's, never takes anything. She's super sensitive. So I can give her like 5 drops and she's like, oh my gosh, that's enough.
Oh, wow.
So it really depends on the person's system. I do think a more toxic system, they definitely usually need a little bit more. And somebody who's
do you find
really
that a lot of people say, like you're saying, if they do have a toxic system, do you find that they're reactive when they take any of your products?
I haven't found that to be the case. The only times I've seen people be like hyper reactive, those tended to be in patients that were that way with every medicine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So no, the toxic people, I feel like they really need to probably clean everything up before they would really get to their proper dose and really be able to feel the effects of it. But part of this is helping people get rid of some of that crap, right? Like give them some control and give them some good alternatives so that they don't just deviate and go back to that pattern, right? I'm just going to take my sleep aid. Where's my Advil? The amount of people that take Advil, Aleve, Tylenol just to function, or just, I take it every day before I golf, or like, what are you doing? That's nuts. Or people that have been told that's okay. That's too much. It's a lot.
Yeah. So last question for you. Where do you kind of see, I guess, the marketplace, CBD in general, where do you see that going?
Well, actually, interestingly enough, I think that the situation, right, that we're all finding ourselves in right now with this pandemic is really cleaning up the marketplace. A lot of these low quality products, and I want to say too, if I say something's from China and I think that that's not a good thing, I mean, because of their production standards, has nothing to do with the Chinese people. I have a lot of friends in China and they're amazing and they're doing amazing stuff. So, different Chinese government's one thing, the people are not to blame for any of that any more than we are for anything our government does. Right. So there's a lot of products on the market right now that are from China that somebody probably went on the computer, you can make the label and everything and have a product to call your own in like 4 weeks.
Right.
So it's really cleaned up a ton of that. And then just, again, people who are producing product to make, I'm not driven by revenue. This is a passion project for me. And I've been in practice for 20 years. So this was something I could add to do for my patients, but it's not something that I'm like, I got to make a gazillion dollars or it's going to fold. So I feel like it's cleaned up a lot of the greed.
Wow.
Because everything's shut down. You can't get anything shipped. You can't get, it's really slowed down what I think is a lot of counterfeit, crappy products. And I'm seeing those companies sort of disappear.
Wow.
Which is awesome. In the future, in the future, I hope I hope to just get people educated so that they can, really know when they buy a product that it is a quality product and quit supporting financially any products that aren't. And that will do it too. That'll clean up the marketplace.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. And I think the pharmaceutical industry is happy with their Epidiolex. I don't see them going in that direction at all because they've already got a great market for pain control and people still really love all those drugs.
Yeah. Well, I lied about the last question. This would be my last question jumping off of that. your husband being in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that say out there that, hey, the pharmaceutical industry is out there to kind of just, crush the CBD industry because it's infringing. What's your thoughts on that?
So my husband is, treats specialty diseases. So his take is all specialty drugs and very sick people, right? Like HIV, MS, cancer. He does all that stuff. And one of the things, when people always ask me, oh, did your husband help you with these formulas? Well, he didn't need to. But of course I asked him all kinds of questions about what he thinks. And he has said to me so many times, I just don't see a better anti-inflammatory on the market, pharmaceutical or not. He really thinks, and he doesn't see them. I think it's too late. I mean, I think they lost it already. It's out. You know what I mean? The pharmaceutical industry lost control of it a long time ago. And I think they might come out with more drugs like Epidiolex, but I don't think they're feeling any true pressure from CBD. Again, maybe Tylenol, Advil, those kinds of drugs, but people that need and like taking pharmaceutical drugs, there'll never be a shortage of that. So I don't think they're feeling any pressure at all. In fact, I've had lots of people just be, and my husband especially, be super encouraging that this is the way to go for what we do and the type of patients we see and our take on how to help people get healthy. This is a really great thing.
Yeah.